Hello and welcome, and we're at Holistic Investments, and I'm your host, Konstantin Kogun, and I'm delighted to have amazing guest today, Illia Polosukhin, who's a co-founder at Near Protocol. Hi, Illia.
Hi, Konstantin. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. It's really a pleasure. I know it took us time to schedule this this podcast interview, but I'm really excited. We're gonna talk a lot about the crypto, blockchain, and your journey to this. And obviously, the your famous research paper, so to speak. Attention is all you need. Which is now used, by the way, at ChatGPT, Llama, Midjourney, and many other foundational AI platforms in the world. So before that, traditionally, we want to just remind you that this content is for informational purposes only, and you should not construe any such information as or any material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any advice. So now that we move this off the way, Ilya, I looked up just the basic information about you, right? And there's not much, honestly. Like your journey was actually to the stars was pretty fast. You're a software engineer at Software Systems, and then you worked since 2014. You worked at Google, where you worked on this famous paper, and then you started Near Protocol. So maybe you can help us to understand a little bit like how this transition from, I call it, so to speak, Web2 world was the world.
For sure, yeah. So, I mean, my background, I'm from Ukraine, from Kharkiv, and I actually started working for a machine learning company when I was 17, so first year of university. I was always kind of excited about the topic, and there was an opportunity. They had an office in Kharkiv to kind of start working there, and they moved me to US in 2012. And then when I saw the cat neuron paper, which was Jeff Dean and Andrew Yang introduced this idea that you can train a model fully unsupervised and it actually learns to detect cats, right? Just from seeing it, lots of images. Like that got me really excited because to me was like a major breakthrough in kind of this idea that we can actually teach machines in a way that doesn't require kind of explicit supervision, and they start understanding the world. And so I joined Google Research to work on natural language understanding, question answering, and we actually had a lot of the same things that people are excited now. They just didn't work as well, but they were in kind of in research mode, right? They were pretty basic. They didn't scale. Like you wouldn't be able to do them quickly, and so the transformer kind of architecture, the one that this paper introduced, was an approach to address that, where if you want to serve something at Google scale and at Google latencies, you need something that can read all of the text, really quickly and give you an answer and give you kind of and you want to train it on massive amounts of text, right? So kind of the faster, the more parallels the model can be, the more you're able to train it. And so transformers is really just well architected to leverage parallelization of GPUs, of all the hardware that we have. Now, Google is extremely kind of great place to learn. And so I was there when I was kind of 24, 25, but I wanted to kind of faster moving environment, right? And so I left to start a Near AI, an AI startup. We wanted to use now what we developed at Google with transformers to apply to a so-called code synthesis program, teaching machines to code problem, right? So, and this really, I mean, one of my fundamental beliefs that this is coming, and this is I've been thinking about it since I was 15. Like this is coming, it's going to change how we interact with computing. And so I wanted to work on that. Now in 2017, that sounded like a science fiction, right? Like, hey, you'll just talk to a computer and it will do what you want, right? And it will write code automatically. Now we know this works, right? And this is pretty much normal now. But what we were trying to do, actually, we engaged a lot of students, computer science students around the world, from China, kind of Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, to write, to make data for us, write comments, write some code. And we faced this challenge of paying them, right? We're an American company. This is hundreds of people around the world who we want to send some money. It's not big amounts of money, right? Like, we were paying people 15 cents per task. And traditional systems are not designed for that, right? Your Swift transfer is like $35 or $50. A bunch of students don't have bank accounts. US doesn't like to send money into China and some Eastern European countries. Those countries don't like to accept dollars. So those are just like a lot of challenges to deal with. And crypto had a very compelling pitch. Hey, this is a global payment network, and you can just send money to an address easily. Now, this is 2018 already. The fees on Bitcoin and Ethereum were still way too high for what we were trying to do, right? I mean, they're way higher now, but back then it was like 30 cents for a 15 cent, sending a 15 cents to a person. And so we started digging in and kind of realized that the systems just inherently don't scale, right? They, in a way, run on a single machine, as if, you come to Google and like every query goes, and every email and everything goes to a single computer. And so being from like a Google background, and my co-founder actually built a sharded database called Single Store, which is used by Fortune 500 companies. It was pretty clear that like we need a different design. And that's when Near AI became Near Protocol, really kind of focused on how do we build a global kind of this payment, but also identity ownership network that is scalable, right? It can actually handle a billion users, that is easy to use, so we can onboard a billion users, and it's easy to develop on, right? So we can bring lots of developers. So fast forwarding to now, right, we have the most used blockchain by number of users. We have, I think on average transaction fees were lower than even Solana right now, on just like how cheap transaction fees are. We have recently like a growth spur, and we proven out, we added more shards to the network, kind of expanding the capacity, proving out the whole point that, as you grow, you need to add more capacity, add more machines processing in parallel. So kind of wrapping up, right? I mean, the story has been really about kind of trying to solve a problem that our startup had it ourselves, seeing blockchain as an opportunity to do that, but realizing that it's lacking a lot, and really going and solving that. And actually now we're bringing some of the Near AI back, and we can talk about that later.
So, I mean, you started obviously from an AI background, a machine learning background, which is impressive by itself, right? So just maybe to shortly reiterate, before we jump into the deep analysis of Near, to reiterate, what was so groundbreaking in the research paper which you co-authored with 5 other authors? Attention is all you need, because basically, like you've mentioned before we prepared for this, right? So that like the transformer, like it is a revolution, like how people start using the models, right? And machine learning, like so maybe you can explain in more layman terms, like what was it like? What was it about? Like like because when you read it, just from description, it is already like a little off-putting. It gives you like the feeling, okay, I'm not a coder, I'm not a technical person, I don't understand what it means, right? So maybe you can explain it in a more simple way.
For sure, yeah. So, I mean, maybe just to give a background, right? The kind of overall problem of any of these machine learning models, right, is how do we teach machines in such a way that, like, when we want to solve a specific problem, right, we can ask it a question, it gives us an answer. And if you just train it on those specific examples, right, it doesn't have the world model. Like, it doesn't actually know much about the world, right? You only shown it like 10 examples of questions, or maybe like 10,000 examples of questions, but you haven't taught it about the world. So it has a very limited ability to reason about. And so the kind of solution for this is you train it on massive amount of data, right? Think of not just full Wikipedia, but like, thousands of Wikipedia worth of like language or images or videos, right, for Sora. And when you're operating at that scale, performance really matters. Now, before the transformer, the way everything was working was very much kind of word by word, right? So think of this as, how we read the page, right? We read, one word at a time, and we kind of read the sentence in a row. Now, machines don't need to do that. Machines actually can consume the whole page at once, read every word at once, and then try to make sense of each word relative to everything else. And so that's kind of the idea of transformer. The transformer kind of consumes the whole page, or even large, like for large context, like a book, at once, and then makes sense of it, and then reasons, and then is able to answer questions, or do completions, etc. And that's kind of that innovation, right? That really unlocked to leverage parallel processing of GPUs as well as other hardware accelerators, is what allows both to train on massive amounts of text, right? Like we would never, if you would train on something that reads one word at a time and you're training on 1 trillion words, right? Like that's going to take forever. But if you can, read, let's say 100,000 or 10,000 words at a time, it's 10,000 times faster. So that's kind of the fundamental unlock. Now, I don't, some of the folks on the team, so it was eight authors together, right, have tried it in images before, and like it clearly worked, right? So it was originally, envisioned for language, like that's what my team and kind of a few other teams that worked on it. But it works on images, it works on videos, it works on audio, it works on DNA, it works on pretty much any input now. And it's because it has such a good properties, kind of so-called inductive bias. So like it has such a good properties of like forcing the model structure that, now you can apply it to everything. And so that's why, this is probably, one of the most, it is the most cited paper probably in AI in last 10 years, because now everyone is using it on top of, whatever you do, right? Image, video, but also, like, as I said, some people doing it for DNA and other things. Now, there's obviously a lot of research, like an OpenAI did an amazing job at scaling them up and training, showcasing what you can do. A lot of other researchers kind of introduced additions to this, but the core kind of idea came from that paper and kind of this group at Group Research that I was part of.
Yeah, that's impressive. How do you feel being one of the most cited authors? Yeah.
It's definitely exciting, but also, want to continue pushing the envelope here. I think parts for me that was surprising that there's nothing better that came out after that. That's, because like back when we were working on this, it's obviously a massive innovation, but it also was pretty kind of, it came out of the other research we were doing, right? We were using attention, for example, which is a special mechanism in deep learning for other things. The other team that Jakob was leading used it for, comparing two sentences. And so it seemed kind of there's going to be continuous innovation on top of this as well. And we've seen very little kind of beyond, again, scaling and like changing some of the, like making it more stable and how to train it at this large scale.
Yeah. So now jumping back to Near, right? Which inspired you, like, and I'm really like honored that we're even talking about the AI advancement. So, but the connection, which is really impressive, that I actually didn't know that, like, the inspiration were for you first were thinking to create a Web2 company, right? And then it's like you understand that there is a beautiful application, very practical and distributed ledger technology, right? So now for someone who is, again, non-technical, and for them, like, they still don't have like the full scope of understanding, okay, why do you need, let's say, hundreds of layer one solutions, right? Let's try to go critical, and let's try to explain again why Near. You mentioned that it is inexpensive, it is incredibly fast, and you mentioned like it's like even more, like it's cheaper, the transactions than in Solana. It's like right now, if I'm not mistaken, 0.0001, like a fraction of a cent, so to speak, right? And the block time is 1.2 seconds on an average. And so incredible speed, incredible, I would say scalability, right? But yet, I don't think right now we're in a stage where you can win the hearts of of the masses only with those technical capabilities. So let's talk about what else Near adds to the table so that people will get excited about it.
For sure, yeah. Well, I'll just tell kind of how we've been thinking about it, right? And I mean, this is not a like a sprint, right? It's a massive marathon of not, and again, not winning against layer ones, but actually bringing everyone from Web2 to Web3. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about it is how do we bring users and developers into this and really build out this rich ecosystem that's really compatible, kind of comparable in the experience, but actually is better, allows to have, new economic opportunities, new ways of owning and participating, as well as just like more fun and more kind of entertaining ecosystem that's compared to like, centralized companies that then kind of start to fall under their own bureaucratic machine. And so to do that, you need a few things, right? You need ways to bring the users. And so what we've done very early on is designed Near to be extremely easy to onboard the users. And what this means is we have an account abstraction that's very native. Like my account is illia.near.
Mm-hmm.
I have lots of different keys with different permissions. I can, think of it as devices and recovery methods. You can start with less secure, maybe authentication, and then you can upgrade it into ledger or custodian without changing your account, right? So a lot of that functionality is just like very native, all embedded there. What this ended up with is that when we went to Web2 applications who were interested in Web3 but didn't know where to start, it was really easy for them to actually integrate and bring their users to us. That's why Near has so many users, is because we have few applications that are, Sweatcoin, for example, had like 160 million installs of their main application. And then they converted over 20 million of those users to actually have a Web3 wallet with like one click, right? Like those users didn't need to figure out seed phrases. They didn't need to install Chrome extensions. They didn't need to like figure out what is this 0xabc997 means. They just set it up. They had an account. They were able to start interacting with blockchain. So beyond that, right, we have something like Hot, which leveraged kind of Telegram and Near onboarding and meta transactions, which means like they are paying transaction fees for the user to really create like extremely easy onboarding and kind of gamified experience. And now they launched, dozens of applications on top of it. And so they have like, they went in February, they launched in February, they have 8 million users now. They had first million in 10 days. They have 8 million users now. They just launched actually even beyond that, what we call chain abstraction, ability to transact from Near on Base, right? So you can, with your Near account, transact on Base now, and they're going to be launching other EVMs and other chains on top of it. So there's just like expansion of experience that Near provides as user comes in, where the joining is easy, and then you have this experience that is indeed cheap and very kind of affordable, but on top of it is like kind of expands even beyond the Near ecosystem.
Now, so that's obviously like really interesting, like how you're setting apart, like, this user experience, which I'm fully in support. I think it's a huge endeavor. Now, a lot of the questions when I was preparing and asked some of my audience, like they ask, like, can you explain the sharding mechanism used by Near and how it improves scalability? Also in simplified way.
Of course, yeah. So this is just like principally, right? Let's think about it. Let's imagine we have a non-sharded system, right? Name a blockchain. There's only like 2 other sharded blockchains. So except pretty much Ton and Elrond, everything else is just a single machine, right? Yes, there's a lot of nodes, but they're all doing the same work. So they'll need to execute every single transaction to validate that it's a correct ledger. And any single machine has a limit on how much they can process, right? They can only receive that much bytes per second. They can only, have that much memory, that much disk, and that much processing power. And that's a really fundamental limitation right now. And like people say, no, we're going to run stuff in parallel, it's at the end, whatever one single computer can like limit it by. And so even if they run in parallel, then the bandwidth becomes a problem because you cannot just send more transactions than your connectivity offers. And kind of the more you put those bars, right, the higher requirements computers have, network have, the less kind of nodes you can have, or the more you need to pay them, right? You kind of need to subsidize that. And so it becomes like more and more kind of closed game. Now, the alternative to this is the same thing that Web2 been using, right? I mean, Google doesn't run out of a single computer, right? Google has, millions of computers processing things in parallel. And, let's think of example of Gmail, right? You log into your Gmail, you see all your emails, I log into Gmail, I see my emails. They don't live on the same computer. They don't need to. And so you can have, thousands of computers serving millions of users in parallel. And so how do we apply the same principle to blockchain? Well, we need to, in a way, split, that my account lives on one computer and kind of as replication, and your account lives on another computer. Now, it's easy to say, it's pretty complicated to be done because of all the security and all of the kind of, interoperability that we want to do. But that's what Near does, is really expands kind of as if it's one space, it's one application, it's one blockchain, but underneath we split and kind of route data, route transactions, store and process them on different machines. And all of them are replicated, verified, there's all of this processes happening. But from a user perspective, it feels like a single blockchain. But underneath, it is able to kind of add capacity, like, we have more transactions coming right now. Let's actually add more capacity. Let's have more computers processing in parallel to make sure we're able to process it and not increase the fees. And for those familiar with like Ethereum, there's a gas limit in a block. So think of this as we can dynamically increase the gas limit, right, when there's more usage, and even decrease it when it's less, and like that just requires more nodes in the network to participate.
Yeah, that's there's an interesting point. Like I have many questions, but I want to also respect some of the most frequently asked questions that I've been asked. Like, so with it, you mentioned the security aspect, right? So how does Near protocol ensure security and decentralization while maintaining high performance?
Yeah, so I'll tell actually about the approach that we're launching in about a month, because that's been kind of the roadmap we've been getting to. So it's called the stateless validation approach. So the way it works is, let's say you send a transaction, right? It goes to one of the so-called shards, and it gets included into a block, but kind of block is split into this separate shards. Now, when it's sent to everybody else, a few things happen. First of all, we have embedded data availability into consensus. So this is like from 2019. I mean, now everybody's like data availability is cool, but like we've built that in 2019 kind of as part of our consensus layer and data routing layer. And so what it means that any single shard will, like, its data will be available on other shards. If everybody in this shard goes offline, right, you can actually still reconstruct all of the block data, all of the transactions from other shards. So this is kind of one big important security concept. That's already live, that's running. Near has the most data availability right now across all of the data availability layers, and we can actually keep expanding it. That's why Near DA is the cheapest layer by far, kind of on the market for those who are looking for it. Now, the other part is you execute a transaction. How do you verify that it's correctly executed? Well, so what we do now is when we execute transaction, we include all of the changes to the state, right? So imagine I sent you money. Well, we'll in that transaction also include how much money I had before, so that now when somebody can verify, they don't need to actually have the state of that shard. They don't need to track the whole kind of state of the chart. They just receive a transaction and information that it touched my account and can verify that it is updated correctly, that the amount that I'm sending you is deducted, right? So there's no double spend. And so now this information can go to any validator in the network, right? Because it's self-containing, right? It contains everything you need to validate it. You don't need to have anything else. And so what we do is now we have lots and lots of validators who can be rotated and changed every block that receive this kind of information to validate that indeed the correct state transition happened. So what it means is the nodes that are block producing, usually in layer 2 land, they call it sequencers. They can be big, they can be, produce blocks, they can, maybe have more RAM. And then we can have, thousands or tens of thousands of validators who receive already executed kind of blocks with the state, verify it, confirm it, approve it, add their confirmation to a consensus, and make sure that blockchain is progressing correctly. And so because this validators actually can be low end network and low end validators. They don't need that much state. They don't need that much RAM. And ideally, I mean, we're not there yet, but ideally, I want them to also be more transient. Like ideally, you will be able to go to some website in your browser, and it will pretty much start validating the blockchain from the browser, because you just receive the already blocks, and you just need to execute them. And we're running WebAssembly, which is available in the browser as well. And so you're able to do all that and kind of transient, like participated for an hour and left. So that's kind of we're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction where the validator nodes can be, lightweight, very transient. Anybody can be doing that. So that's kind of how we ensuring a very high performance, because we have the nodes that are receiving blocks and producing them. At the same time, we have, potentially thousands of validators who can verify that those nodes are producing things correctly.
So I will ask you more like short, but I would say provocative questions. So you mentioned that technologically, let's put it this way, like you think that Ton and Elrond are one of your main competitors from this sharding perspective, right? So do you think eventually you will outperform them?
Well, we are outperforming them on number of transactions processed and users participating. So
Okay, that's a good answer. So one of the other aspects in terms of ecosystem development and adoption is what are the kind of like household names? What are the projects that are building on top of you, right? So maybe you can remind us what are the notable projects and DApps currently built on Near protocol?
yeah, so if you go to like DApp Radar, for example, Near has usually like 4 in top 10 by kind of active users, daily active, weekly and monthly active users applications. And so those are, we have the application called Hot. So Hot is this kind of both wallet and a game that's integrated directly into Telegram. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, they grew to 8 million users, and now they're opening up Hot protocol that allows people to transact across all chains. And we should talk about chain abstraction more. Now, then there is Kaiching. So Kaiching is actually pre-installed on Oppo and Xiaomi phones. It's a Southeast Asia. They just launched in France, Poland, and Spain. I think they're going to be launching in Brazil. And it's a combination of e-commerce and kind of news feed. And they use Near for loyalty, for payments. They actually used Stripe before. It is a Web2 company. And so when they switched to Near, they dropped their fees that they were paying 100x, right? Because Stripe charges 30 cents per transaction, like when you're actually paying for something, and Near is a fraction of a cent. So we have Sweatcoin, which is as you walk, you're kind of earning their Sweat asset, and then you can participate in lots of different programs with that. They're also launching the chain abstraction ability to interact with other chains. And we have a PlayEmber, which is a kind of casual gaming platform with like a bunch of games they have. Now there's a bunch of other applications, smaller than this, that are kind of offering various activity from DeFi like Refinance and Borrow on like swapping and lending. We have a few more wallets which are providing pretty extensive experience. for kind of hundreds of thousands of users. And there's things like, some of the AI projects that are starting to, launch and build out. But those are like, those four are pretty much the kind of bread and butter on the user side.
So, it will be interesting also when people want to onboard, like let's say you have a traditional project and there's so many options right now, like so many blockchains that all of them are saying we're the best, like, we're so it can be challenging from a traditional perspective. So how does a near protocol support like developers in terms of tools, resources, and incentives, and where, let's say, companies who want to do a deeper dive and compare your capabilities to others, where can they go to find more information?
Yeah. I mean, you should start a journey with near.org or near.org/founders.
Mhm.
There's kind of a lot of services and content there. And I mean, overall, we try to help and route founders to, raise money with VCs, connect with these other projects to get users. I think probably the most interesting kind of offering that Near has right now is to link up with Hot and with Sweat to really bring your app to their millions of users audience, and kind of in the easy experience where users are already logged in into your app and can start engaging, and you can have a program around that. And I think that's, for anyone who's launching an application, like that's the best thing. Like it's actual users, right? Not just kind of, oh, you got the grant and then that's pretty much it. So we kind of focus on that side, as well as more bringing some of the more infrastructure projects again that really help everybody else to kind of to become successful, right? Because, and this is important, that like those infrastructure projects become kind of building blocks that everybody else build on top.
Yeah, for sure. That's infrastructure is generally like what brings, like the sustainability and the growth, to the entire ecosystem. Now let me ask you about like the future, like, outcomes. Like, so you mentioned there's in 1 month you have a major update, like, I'm sure you're excited about the entire team excited. So how do you see like, Near protocol, let's say like in 5 to 10 years, like, give us like the big picture, like what's going to happen. I know it's challenging in crypto. We look at
Yeah.
3 years or 4 years max, but let's imagine.
Yeah. I mean, so we have a very broad vision, right? That we outlined actually in 2019. You can call it different things, but it's the same idea. The vision is we want all people to own their data, assets, and power of choice. And the way it will manifest is through a new internet. This new internet will combine the trustless interaction. It will combine AI. It will combine private data and trustless interactions through blockchain and peer-to-peer communication, and will be kind of based on these new principles, right, that we outlined in Web3. Now, for that to happen, there's a lot of things that need to work. And actually, one important aspect that I now describe to everyone is the current internet is actually pretty screwed. And it's for multiple reasons. A really good example is email. So email is this like decentralized protocol that we all like to refer to, but actually it's been completely Sybiled, right? And so Gmail, Outlook are only accepting emails from other authorized whitelisted servers. So if you spin up your own email server, and try to send email to some others, like somebody on Gmail, it will actually not go through. It will go to spam automatically.
Yeah.
So that's a current reality. The current reality is the internet is kind of collapsing under Sybil attack because it doesn't have a natural Sybil resistance. It doesn't have a natural kind of accountability, right? Like if you request somebody and they don't respond to you, there's no way to like, oh, actually, I paid them and they didn't respond to me. And more importantly, with evolution of AI, every 10,000 lines of code have 2-3 bugs, and AI will be really kind of effective at finding those issues. So we will see cyber attacks that happening at the kind of networking level, at operating system level, at software level, to kind of the stack of internet. And so we kind of need to rebuild a lot of these pieces, right, to really work together. So that's really the vision. The vision is like a new stack of that's powered by different incentives. And as part of this, we will see a transformations of business models of some of the big companies as well, because it naturally will happen as you kind of rebuild this system. Now, to do that, you need scalable blockchain that can scale to billions of users. You need a completely different peer-to-peer stack, right? When you're communicating to each other, which relies on this, kind of blockchain identity and payment structure. You need an AI that is able to write code that is correct, that's formally verifiable. And so that's actually what we announced a week ago, that we're working on AI developer inside Near AI lab that we brought back, because we think this is going to be one of the most fundamental pieces to enable this. And you need to package all of this into like new economic opportunities, new economy, and open it up to billion users, right? So you need this user distribution platforms like Hot, like Sweat, like Pitching. So that's kind of the vision, is like all of this coming together where you almost have like a new operating system stack that is self-sovereign, that runs in this new internet, which is interconnected through peer-to-peer kind of cryptographic communication. It has cryptographic and cryptoeconomic reputation, and it's AI generated and kind of verifiable. And we interact a lot with computing through AI. So that's a vision. It's it's a lot. We're decomposing pieces and like shipping parts of it, right? It's like, okay, well, we need a blockchain. We have a team working on this peer-to-peer stack called Calimero. We have kind of Near AI working on AI developer. We have chain abstraction that connects all the blockchains together, because at the end you kind of want like a single experience, not 100 different blockchains. And we have these distribution platforms that we've been working with to kind of interconnect them and offer them some of the services. So, but yeah, like as we evolve, this all going to be coming together.
So with this said, like, let me ask you now, like, I would say a little bit different question in terms of like, what are the major challenges you're facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges are, there's a traditional Web3 challenges, which are like, we don't have enough applications in the Web3 broadly, right? Like everybody wants to build infrastructure, but it's actually good. Like, market sentiment is positive, regulations are somewhat more in the positive side now. And so like there's more new talent coming in. And especially on the Web3 side, we working with a lot of really talented founders building infrastructure, which is great, totally needed, but like the number of applications being built on top of it is very little. And so that's probably the biggest challenge. And then from an investor side as well, they're not funding applications, they keep funding infrastructure. And so in some sense, like, we will overfund the infrastructure, and we'll see similar things have happened kind of at some point. Intel gotten like, super high price and then crashed and has like been negative actually since. Cisco was the same, got overfunded, like the infrastructure got overfunded and then crashed. So I think like we'll get into the same state where like infrastructure gets overfunded as like an index, and then applications will start taking over. But like we're kind of like pre that stage. And so actually AI developer effort we started is really also focused on trying to solve this problem in a little bit different way, where we're going to actually build applications with AI. So we're going to open it up and offer people to come in, describe their idea, iterate with AI on how this idea should work. And then we'll have AI and humans, like actual developers, build together these applications. And so we'll have a lot of applications being built in the ecosystem, and then people can take and decide and launch them. We'll open source everything. But it will actually be a way to also just like bootstrap that, again, using AI and teaching AI to actually write code that is correct, that's formally verifiable. So, but I think that's like a fundamental challenge right now that Web3 has.
It's really interesting. I love the flow of our conversation because my next question was actually about what advice would you give to aspiring like developers or just entrepreneurs who are looking to build on Near. Because if you're saying that this AI will build everything, then like why do we need developers?
Well, I mean, it will not work immediately, right? So like you'll get to a first prototype quickly, and then you can iterate on it. But we do need founders, right? So I mean, developer is part of your job, but the other part of your job is bringing this to market. It's figuring out, who are your first customers and how are they going to start using it. It's partnering with other projects and distribution channels. Is figuring out how you can grow this and what features to add and what's important for your users. And I think that's really the missing piece. Like crypto, it's very little developers in general. But that said, there's some really talented engineers and developers and hackers, but a lot of them just building for themselves, right? They, like a number of projects I've seen, for example, at the hackathons that are just this kind of, oh, let's build it as a Venmo, right, on crypto is, like I think like I've seen like twice a hackathon. And it's because like, well, actually that's not the problem to solve, right? What is the problem to solve? And figuring that out is extremely important. And then you can figure out how to build it. We can offer some tooling for you to build faster, to iterate faster. But at the end, it's going to be this process of discovery of what users want and going to be adopting.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot about like other like some of your competitors, right? And one of the biggest criticisms that we hear that like beyond the level of adoption, some of the other blockchains are pretty centralized. So like top 20 wallets control like major decision like in the entire ecosystem. So with this, like I want to ask you, how does a Near protocol approach the community governance and decision-making process?
Yeah, so we have a lot of actually work groups that are responsible for different decisions. So there's a protocol work group that reviews all the near enhancement proposals, NEPs, and decides if they should be, included in the protocol or not. Right? It's a fully transparent process. There is, some GitHub, and the people in that group are from 3 different companies, right? Kind of participating, as well as like a lot, some other people participating as, ideas and discussions. Similarly, we have, for example, events work group, right? So again, I think 3 or 4 different organizations coming together, planning events for the ecosystem, right? Receiving proposals for, should we sponsor this event? Should we participate in the hackathon? As well as, proposing themselves, and then kind of deciding what are things that should be done. We have infrastructure committee, right? Similarly, I think that actually infrastructure has like 6 or 7 different organizations coming together and deciding like, hey, should we fund this or should we? So we kind of like specialized, created specialized work groups that are deciding on specific kind of important efforts in the ecosystem. They have a budget, they have kind of a mandate and a way they, can evaluate their success. And so they're working in that effort. Now, foundation right now is still doing some of the coordination in the ecosystem, but as we kind of growing, we're trying to like every function that we see people still rely on foundation, we want to spin it off, set it up as a separate kind of work group or effort that somebody else can be leading going forward. And I think like in general, it's important to continue like finding other participants in the ecosystem who can take on the roles that people, come to foundation. So like, for example, ecosystem marketing, we have Near Week and kind of a few other teams who are now helping projects with marketing, right? If you want to get, familiar with the ecosystem, get introduced to the community, you can go to Near Week and they gotta include you in your newsletter, get you on Twitter Spaces, right? All the things that usually people rely on foundations to do. So that's kind of the idea, is like, what are those players in the ecosystem we need that are going to be doing these jobs that right now people rely on foundation.
Is there a way for co-founders to veto some decisions?
I mean, mostly it's a soft power. It's not like people don't need to. respect what I'm saying. Like but obviously, if I make a good argument, like they can consider it.
I love your politically correct answer.
Yeah.
So, like, if you like, I mean, you mentioned just general some of the challenges in Web3 as an industry that we have, right? So beyond the level that we discussed, like, that are challenging for you, like, what do you think are the top challenges for the near term? Like, like we're talking about the short term, like maybe let's come for the coming few years. If you would identify top three challenges as an industry.
I mean, I think again, as I said, like the core challenges are right now like developers and applications like that, that combination. It's I mean, it's somewhat like the flip side of the meme coin mania is like, it's always been there. People like expect 100x from, and like actual applications take time to build out, actual networks, actual protocols. They take time to get built out and, see the growth. I mean, to give you an example of Near, right? We had a consistent 10x increase in, for example, monthly active users since we launched, right? We had 10,000 monthly actives to 100,000 to a million to 10 million, right? Beginning of this year. I mean, there's an opportunity to get to 100 million this year. I don't know if we're gonna hit that, but I mean, it took time, right? It took time to get to 10 million, and now we're top one. Like, obviously, I mean, 100 million going to 10 million, from 10 million to 100 million is then harder, but our goal is to get to a billion. But I think like this expectations right now, and meme coins are kind of proliferating that as, oh, this is like a quick coming in, it should happen within like a few weeks or a month or a few months, versus like taking more of this is a long-term built out of a new internet approach. And so, I mean, that in turn, obviously kind of shifts a lot of the incentives and, some of that capital that could have come in and supported projects that are truly building long-term initiatives, maybe chasing this kind of short-term 100x opportunities. And again, like before it was still at least in something that's like more real, right? Infrastructure, et cetera. Now it's all purely just moving to meme coins, right? So like even the real projects are kind of almost like getting deprived of, like, it's a zero sum capital in a way, right? So if it's invested in meme coins, that means it's not going into applications and real projects. So that's maybe like I would say like the whole Web3 space challenge that, we should be all looking after and be very careful about. I think the other one is just the kind of Web3 promise, right? Like we're coming from Ukraine. Like, I mean, for me, it's like no brainer. Like I cannot imagine not working, right? Because like obviously the current system is completely broken, right? There was like, I think 80 banks failed even before the war, right? Just in a span of 10 years, 80 banks failed in Ukraine. Like since war started, there's like 15 banks failed. And this is after already 80 other banks failed. So like this, like actually the bank I was paying some of the bills for an apartment my family had failed, right? So I don't even know where to pay bills anymore. So like to me, like, crypto is like very like, hey, this is a system that actually works. It's, cryptographically proven. It's, we can formally verify the system as well. It doesn't have like people in the middle to make arbitrary decisions. The example I also really like is FTX actually paid out all of their on-chain loans before bankrupting. So like they had off-chain loans from, Genesis and a bunch of other places, and on-chain loans across, a few different facilities. They paid out all of their on-chain loans and then went to bankruptcy. And that just shows you like on-chain works. And again, like FTX was not like if FTX was on chain, they couldn't have done what they've done.
Yes.
So that's why we also need like, decentralized, non-custodial exchange, multi-chain exchange. So to me, that's kind of no-brainer. But I think in the West, right, in US and Europe, like the systems mostly work. They don't have as much kind of demand for the systems. And so it became kind of more of a casino for them than really like, hey, this is actually the infrastructure we need for the future. And I think that's I mean, to me, it's been a challenge where, you know, you meet people who are building something great, but they like don't see the need for crypto
Yeah.
and kind of blockchain and the systems. And like we will get there, but again, as I said, it just takes time and takes this growth, right? I mean, the way I see it is when we get to 1 billion users, like truly 1 billion users, that's when, you know, like this is not going to be like a thing on the side, right? This is going to be a fundamental force. And so that's kind of where, you know, we focused a lot of our efforts on how do we continue bringing this growth to Web3 and to near with usage.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. One of the things that I also observed living in the United States, you know, like people don't feel the same pain, right? As you mentioned, it works. But when we talk about how it works, like people don't really care about how it works. That's the other challenging part. Like, you know, the fact that we still have to pay $40 for a wire transfer and it takes 3 to 5 days is a nightmare. This is like, it's not supposed to be like this, right? You know, or the fact that sometimes the account can be frozen and like just for compliance purposes and they don't have to disclose anything to you is madness. Or the fact that let's say like, you know, just a microtransaction like also going to cost sometimes more than the actual transaction is also like,
Exactly.
so there are a lot of like examples, but like because majority of the people they don't feel this pain because somehow it works. There's only like a small fraction of people who face challenges and they hate and they become very easily become the proponents of the blockchain because they see it like a solution because they're
Yeah.
forced to learn. All right, so yes, that's an interesting point. Like, you know, it has to just the time has, you know, has to be, you know, there. Like it's just something we can eat.
Yeah. I think the way to describe it is like usually people adopt a new product when it's 10 times better.
Yeah.
And like blockchain is not 10 times better, right? It's better, it's infinite times better when you're screwed. And it's like a little bit better, like it maybe like 20-50% better in normal times, right? And so like for people who got screwed, right, you know, be the journalist that, you know, like your information got like you know, hacked into, or someone whose account got blocked, right? Or, you know, we're from Ukraine, like on, you know, February 23rd, like I didn't know if the banks would exist tomorrow, right? So like if I wanted to send my mom money,
Yeah.
like sending them not in crypto would not be an option because I'm like what actually, which of these banks that exist in Ukraine actually will be not bombed by tomorrow? But so that's what I'm saying. Like when there's a situation when things are really bad, then it's like infinitely better. But normal day to day. But I think we have an interesting, again, where AI comes back is we have a platform shift, and platform shift comes from that right now. So a maybe important part is that most of the current internet kind of converged to this attention economy. The attention economy has a very specific thing. It has the attention is limited. You can only have, you know, 18 hours a day of attention of a person. And so what happens is these applications, these mega corporations that have already pretty much all their target audience. Like if you have more than 1 billion users, you're probably not going to grow like, you know, like double-digit % of audience. So you need to actually grow the amount of attention people's, you know, amount of time people spend on your app so you can monetize it more, so you can extract more money. And so what they start to do is pretty much create more and more, you know, dopamine or whatever ways for you to spend more time on that application, or in a way to manipulate you. And that I think is a fundamental, you know, challenge that we have with Web2. Like again, beyond just like payments and banks, etc. But like there's a fundamental challenge with Web2 that like this is monetization of attention that go into extreme. Now, what happens now is AI, like this is existing problem, is that few of these apps going to become massive monopolists on attention, right? They're going to go from just, you know, capturing like single digit to grow and grow and grow that. Like Google is a really good example of launching, just Gemini and search, which again, it's not new. Like I was expecting this. We had the prototype of that at 16. The challenge is like, what do you do if you're that link that you replaced, right? Like now you're not getting any of that attention. You don't get any monetization. You don't get any payments, which means you don't have salary to pay for the data. So all of those places just become a data kind of data markets who are just selling data to Google, right? To Facebook, etc. So like that's where we see right now, Reddit and Stack Overflow just becoming data brokers. And on top of it, over time, they're actually going to get less and less more of new data because people just spend all of their attention there and generate data already directly on those platforms. So we have a massive platform shift that's happening. And that's why like our vision is not just about assets, it's about data and power of choice. Power of choice is really important, right? It spans from governance to really deciding where your attention should go. And so we need a way to really focus all of this advancements on the user's success. We call it user-owned AI because compared to kind of a corporate-owned AI, right? All of those models, right? They're all optimizing for more revenue for the company. We need to start optimizing for individual users, well-being, economic success, health, etc. And to do that, we need to kind of change the model. We need to change the platform. And so that's where we have an opportunity right now to kind of change how you interact with internet because of this AI platform shift. And now you don't need to go to google.com to get good results, right? Perplexity is giving you pretty good results being a startup. And so, imagine Perplexity, but that's local, that's focused on you as a user. Now you can, control how much attention you spend where. You don't need to have the same effects. Similarly, if you're a creator, instead of now publishing on New York Times or posting on Reddit, you can be contributing to a data and receiving micropayments from that. So like we have a new economy, we have a new attention model that's coming. And so that's where Web3, I think, is a fundamental piece to enable that. And so that's what we like bringing back together, right? I mentioned, right, kind of all those pieces really starting to work together and really transforming from what right now is going to be a battlefield because also everybody will sue everyone. Sony's suing everyone for using their data because it's like mentioned on some article. Like imagine somebody on Reddit posted about, I don't know, some character from Sony and then that got used in a model. Now Sony can sue you, but like, did you use Reddit for fair use? Like there's so many problems now that just like kind of being encompassed. And like we need a new platform that is indeed 10x better than this kind of whole situation, that is AI native, that is actually verifiable and cryptographically kind of aligned reputation to really enable all of this to work.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to fix. The internet is broken on so many levels, like on a level of privacy and a level of just like validity of information, as you mentioned, or like on a level of just like architecture, as you mentioned. So but we definitely see like that, like people like you, your colleagues, and overall, like your team. Like I think it's doing an impressive job. Like I'm very bullish to be on Near after this interview, so like I will definitely now look into more like all of your updates and roadmap. No, but we live not only with like the technical like I would say advancement in mind, right? So. There's one question which I never, I never disclosed in the beginning because I wanted to be as genuine as possible, which is a personal question. I want to finish this interview with this. You do a lot of things and you seem inspired with what you do and motivated, but like I want to ask you about a different level of inspiration and meaning. So, what is the meaning in life for you, Illia?
I mean, I think what drives me is really few things, but I do want billions of people to use what I built, right? At the end, I'm a technologist. I imagine the future. When I realize that future and get in front of everyone. I am excited, as everyone is, working with smart people and kind of sharing ideas. And so, doing some investment, also supporting founders. And at the same time, I'm always like, I was, envisioning how AI can evolve from, I mean, as I said, maybe like when I was 15 or 14. I got excited about the idea. Actually, I watched the movie back when I was 10, I think. So for me, this is not like, can it be? It's when it's gonna happen, right? And I mean, that's why I was a bit early on on some of the things, but I believe like this is gonna fundamentally change how we interact in general, right? With computing, but also with each other, and in a way, it augments our own intelligence, right? It turns us like into super being as well, and we already see this, right? Like how much more effective, intelligent can we be with smartphones, with ChatGPT, with all of those tools. So to me, that like those are the things that drive me is like, how do we make ourselves better? How do we get this in front of billion users? Obviously, Web3 had strung a lot of nodes coming from Ukraine, not trusting into the kind of traditional people-run system, and at the same time, working with amazing people who are pushing that vision as well together.
Brilliant. That's perfect. I want to end it with Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
And yes, thank you so much, Ilya. Like I sincerely wish you success. I wanted to reach 1 billion users. That's the minimum you should be hoping for. And also I want to wish success to Near and Protocol team. I think you're doing an amazing job. I know you do a lot of charity work, which is separate. Thank you. I know you support Ukraine a lot. This is public. Everyone can check this. So please continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you for inviting me.